Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning.
Morning. Hey. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before I turn this over to our Sergeant of Arms, just one quick thing. The board met yesterday, and we did. We have received all the votes for the name change. There were 13 people that voted for Spirit of St. Louis Rotary Club. There were 4 people that voted for Midwest Rotary Club, and 2 people abstained. Or said no preference, I can say that more important way. So we are proceeding with the name change to Spirit of St. Louis Rotary Club. They just got the paperwork, and we're moving forward with it. So we're looking at new logo and a few different things. So anyway, just wanted to inform you. And the launching of it would be at our 75th anniversary party on May 5th. May 6th. That, Tom?
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Is anybody else happy to be here today? Mr. District Governor nominee designate Nolan. Why are you happy?
I'm happy, I'm happy because I finally understand exactly what that means.
It's coming.
Exactly, yeah. I find a little more every day. Last night at 9:30, it's a note from John Dietmar. Yeah, you need to go to this. Okay.
Those are good. Those are good. And the annual fund chairman next year.
Oh, no, I'm the chairman right now. Yeah, I know. Got a meeting tonight, so.
Your number of emails probably dropped someone you retired, but now it's back up.
Oh, yeah, they're coming back up quickly.
Who else is that? Yeah.
And this last week, because I was coming back from Texas. The weather wasn't that much different than it was here. But it was a good time.
Very good. Welcome back. You look happy in every picture. So, I think we're all going. All right. I don't know why. Some days like that, you just wake up. You know, your plant-based diet. When we pass away, they plant you, so what is? Oh, man. No, I'm gonna be more of the dust would come, the dust would go.
With the cannon?
Yeah. All right. David. Good. Happy. Yes. Donating to the cause. Thank you. President.
Leaving tomorrow morning to go ice fishing and hoping that the weather is colder than what it is. Wisconsin and Biker Day, Sturgeon Bay area.
You gotta stop in and see how.
I know, we're with other people and yeah, I've already told him I'm coming that way, but no, it would work out.
Flotation devices.
We actually, this is our 3rd time doing it, and we get on a little ATV and go, because I asked him, I said, well, how far out are we? We're about 2 miles out. So, yeah, so I hope it's. This is for our 3rd time. First time we went, it was 33 inches thick. The second time was 13 inches. So hopefully it goes back the other way. 13 still fun. With a bunch of guys sitting on inside of a thing with heaters.
Just remember, Brian, the horizon should not be moving. All right, well, anyway, I'm excited about the name change. Yeah, can't wait to get maybe some t-shirts or something done. I think it'd be fun. And we are a spirit group, so with that, Mr. Robin, you have a program today?
I do.
Thank you, sir. We are a spirit.
Good morning.
Really?
Let's try that. There we go. I'm loud enough. I can, y'all know me. Huh, what? Yeah. Don't ask me to start yelling. I was very happy to meet last week with Susan Taylor, our speaker. She and I met after the meeting last week, got to know each other a little bit. I'm not gonna tell anything that we talked about, you can do all of that. But I do want to say, and this is, I thought about it later, she is the ward person for this area. I live off of Dorset and 270, for those who've been, some of you have been to our house, or I know where I live anyway. I'm, I guess, honestly fortunate that our neighborhood has both our ward people in it. So it is really helpful when it comes time to clear the streets, because they know where to work. I'm just kidding. They do a great, in all honesty, Maryland Heights has done a great job with all the slop that we've had recently. They really have done a good job with it. And I think that it was good for us to know we've moved to another locale. We've had a few people from Maryland Heights out, but it's kind of good to know how the government works, how the city government works. I've taught civics, I've taught high school and Missouri Constitution, US Constitution, but I'll be very honest, the way the city level works is something that I really didn't understand. So it's part of why I asked Susan out here, and without anything else, I'm gonna have you come up and be happy to have you explain what you would like to tell us about.
Okay, thank you. I did put in there, which I should have said. It would be good if everyone had a set of those, so I'm not sure what the easiest thing is. All together.
I'll give you this to use so that they can hear on the other end. Right, Bill can hear us. Yeah.
Myself, except for the history, I want to hold up what I'm talking about.
And then if you will, because I wasn't centered where I should have gone.
Where is?
You can, the camera's aimed towards this. So
Okay.
welcome to use the podium itself.
Oh, skin me. Very nice.
Thanks for doing it. By the way, I'm huge on the environment. So if there are any that you decide you don't need, you don't want to take with you, just put them back on the table, please, and I'll recycle the paper. That would be great. And if they're all of interest, that's great too. I'll go ahead and start it. Should I confess first that I was a Lion when I lived in the Detroit area, and that I belonged to Brooks and Kiwanis? Is that okay?
No problem.
And then on the other thing.
Now it's time to come full circle.
Yeah. And then there's the where did I go to high school? Well, most of you heard it was Champaign, Illinois. So not the answer you might have been expecting. I did go to Washington for grad school, so maybe that counts. My professional life was spent as a vice president in commercial lending for 3 major banks in Detroit, Fort Wayne, and St. Louis. I did make notes. I don't have to memorize, so you'll excuse me if I look down occasionally. And then in the late 90s, I served as a 2-term mayor for the city of Crystal Lake Park. Does anyone know what that is? It's tiny. It's off Oak Road. It had 522 residents at the time. My ward now is 10 times that. Pretty amazing.
My mother had a relative who used to live out there in the 40s. And those were kind of lake homes, I think.
They were originally.
It was elevated on the second level for flooding.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was.
I don't know that either. I wasn't there during any of the heavy flooding times around here. But the creek runs through part of the their system that runs through the Willows, which is the condominiums that, and then through some of the
I used
houses.
to live on Briarbrook, the south of it.
I lived on East, and when I ordered takeout or something, they say, well, what's the nearest intersection? And I say, I'm south and east of the corner of South and East. It was just mind boggling. I had to
kind of explain what that was. And then I moved to Maryland Heights, and in 2019, I decided to run. Can you hear me okay? Good. I decided to run for city council. And I was running against the incumbent, and I got out and knocked on doors. That was really the key, and people liked that. And the more I knocked, the more I got into it, and I just had a lot of fun and won, as you can see. I was reelected last year unopposed. That was a piece of cake, so that was an easier one. As I thought this morning about what to say, I can babble on forever about how much I love my job. I'm not sure that really is a wide enough perspective. So I called some friends and I said, if you were going to listen to me, what would you like to know, like about a city or something? And they gave me some suggestions. They said, what I do for residents and what I do for the city. What could residents do to help me do my job? And I'm kind of stuck on that one. I thought of one thing, but I'm going to work on that because I think it would be nice to have more of a team perspective. And sometimes people will call and say, oh, I know you're busy. I don't want to bother you. No, I'm not busy. This is my job. Call me. And that's, I'd really like to have more of a team feeling with that. I want to know how the city spends its money. That's a good one. What services does the city provide that might not be known by all residents? I like that one too. And then how do we find out what other cities are doing? So these were really challenges for me. I'm going to suggest, I hope you'll have questions, and maybe we'll kind of keep them at the end and then we can take them all at once. That would be good. I'm giving you the handouts are following along. And if you get bored, you've got plenty of reading material there, so that's good. When I came into office, I had some expectations that were just made up or gossip that I listened to. For instance, somebody posted somewhere that Maryland Heights was an old boys network. We're now 4 women, 4 men. And that the mayor ran everything. And I discovered that is absolutely not true. We have a mayor who sits back, he's quiet, and he sits back and listens to people and then will come in with his thoughts. And I thought, I just listened to what somebody made up in a post. So it tells me not everything on social media is true, but I guess you already know. One of the things I've noticed is that no one ever tells me what to think, what to do, or how to vote. And I prize that, absolutely. So there's no behind the scenes, like we have to do this. It's if people have questions, then we get them answered, or we each get our own questions answered, and that's really important. I also thought it was going to be boring to sit in our meetings because when I was mayor, I ran the meetings, but I thought, okay, so I just sit there and listen. And I discovered that's not true either. I love going to meetings, and I'm assigned to certain ones, and I'll go to the first handout here. Some of you may know this already. This one, the Maryland Heights logo, is the list of what's called standing committees. These are ones that are, they're staffed by city council members, one from each ward on each of those committees. Then you can see the things that are true. I'm on community development. I love that one. I chair finance administration. I'm on economic development. Just some really great stuff here. Public improvements. And I go and I love them because I'm curious. I want to know what happens in the city. And that's pretty interesting too. Then we have commissions. Again, you may know this, but they are entirely made up of residents. So I don't play a part in any of those. And I love to go and listen to what's going on. That's interesting to me. Planning and Zoning Commission is the one I like the best. If somebody is proposing something like Tony's Donuts is going to add a new, you probably know, adding a new location, or what's happening with the steak and shake down there at Schnucks, which is going to be a Chipotle, by the way. What other project? Who is making proposals? And some of them are, well, they just don't get much attention because they don't fit with our, in my, can you hear me okay, David? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Some of them just don't fit with our comprehensive plan, and that's important. We said this is how we see the city and, put like a car wash next to a house, that's what I'm saying, that zoning, that's really important. Part of my education was the first day that I went in, I was being introduced to people and this is my banking thing coming back and I said, ooh, could I make an appointment, sit down with you and learn what you do? Everybody was so gracious and generous with their time that it was just really cool to find out. I really think we have a great staff. As you can tell, I'm obviously biased toward the city. Not all cities work alike. I think there's a general similarity to the process, but you may see different ones if you're in a different city. So I'm just saying, this is the city that I know. Crystal Lake Park doesn't relate because it was so small and no business. So this is kind of it. I also like going to the chamber. I didn't put in a handout for that. Some of you may belong to the Maryland Heights Chamber. But when I was in banking, one of the things I enjoyed the most was going out and networking, because that was funding the business. And I just loved going to everything. Obviously, that hasn't changed. And it's fun now to go to chamber networking. The chamber meets here meets twice a month at 7:30, not too much later, you guys. And one of them is here. The idea is to network. And the first time I went, they said, well, it's okay to have competing businesses, but don't make like a big deal out of competing. And so when I got up with my little elevator talk, I said, well, no competition here, not a problem. The reason I was there, and mention that to you too, if you took my card, if you have questions about the city and you just don't know who to call, my cell phone's on the back, please make use of that. That's how I see myself being valuable with that. I talk about events at the chamber, and let's see, that's handout. And this is the winter spring catalog. It's almost out of date, but the new one isn't quite out yet. The reason I'm mentioning it is some of you might not live here, but the very last handout is for people who might live elsewhere but work here. And our community center has a deal where you can get resident rates if you do that. So that's something that might interest you. I think I want to go back into it. I was talking about the committees and the commissions. My theory is that people kind of think of government kind of the way I do. It's a black box. Some stuff goes in, stuff comes out, but who knows what happens in the middle. It just isn't obvious to everybody. So I invite people a lot to come to meetings. Any of them are open. I go to the commissions. I don't sit on them, so I'm a member of the public also. Everyone is welcome to do that. And just stress that if you have any interest, whether it's Maryland Heights, you can come to ours. Even if you don't live here, you can go to ones in your city. Some of them could be boring, yes. I say city council isn't the most interesting because the agenda has been set, all the committee work and the commission work has been done. So it's a matter of just kind of going through the stuff pretty quickly. However, it's still worth coming because you get to meet, you can meet your ward representative, and I can meet people. I love that. I love meeting them. I forget their names instantly, so that's everybody knows that about me. So there are a lot of things, either age, I say that's not one of them. I've never been good at names, so I'm kind of giving up on that one. When we came to the question about what we're doing in the city, and I'm sorry, I have notes and it's hard for me to stay attached to them. I love working with the staff, and we have just added a new one, and you may have seen ads posted. We've had some retirements this past year, so and with the job market the way it is, it takes a while to fill those. The one we added, and this took a little while, is a social worker. Don't hear about cities having those. So everybody's like, you have one? Generally, what happens if there's an emergency, the police or the fire protection district are handling that, and their help goes so far, and sometimes help is needed beyond that. Maybe it's more different living quarters if the house burned down, or they come up against hoarding situations. That's one of the ones we hear the most is people who are hoarders need some help so we can kind of get that resolved and get the ordinance, the codes back in compliance.
Find a lot of orders.
I don't know how many, I just hear the word a lot. I can tell you that in Crystal Park, which was small, there was one, I didn't even realize what was inside the house. The city had spent a lot of attorney hours trying to get him to clean up the outside in the yard. And one day, his house caught fire inside and his hands were burned because he kept trying to put it out rather than call the fire department because they didn't want anybody to know that his house was filled with junk, top to bottom. He went into the bedroom and threw his mother out the window, and it's just the first floor, but then finally, he or someone else called the fire department. When the fire was out, the amount of junk that had congealed still stood as high as the house. There was so much of it, and he was trying to rescue partially burned cassette tapes and put them in his trunk. Clearly, that's a mental disorder. I call it that because there are all kinds of them. We all have them, hopefully. So I don't mean that as critical. That was tough. So I use that as an example that I'm not sure. I know of one that was here in Maryland Heights before I was in office. I'm not sure how many there are, but that certainly takes some help. And what Claire Riebling McQuaid, say her name correctly, just started the beginning of the year, and I called her and I said, "Tell me more about what you do so that I can give that information succinctly to you all." And she said, "Well, her overall umbrella is to connect the community members with services and resources." Specifically, she told me about helping a person find health services. That's a biggie. This person didn't have any insurance and just developed diabetes, didn't know what to do. She helped her register for healthcare, the ACA, known as Obamacare online, and then find caregiving services. The idea isn't that they are dependent upon her, but they can use her as a resource and get her in the right direction. She mentioned establishing youth programs with the help of local partners and organizations. She's planning a Medicaid application event with the help of Legal Services of Eastern Missouri and Bilingual International Assistance Service. By the way, these will be open to anyone. So if you see them, you don't have to live in Maryland Heights to come, if you know somebody that would benefit. The last one we talked about was to include mental health in our comprehensive plan. We talk about well-being, we'll expand it to include mental health services, even like peer groups for certain issues that people might have in common, and hold those at the community center. So I'm just really excited that she's here. Other cities are saying, "What? This is great." So they're watching us, and this all came out of, a lot of it came out of the whole defund the police movement. Now, we didn't. This will assist the police, but police didn't lose any personnel dollars because of this. It all is coming out of the government center, and yet it will be helpful to the police. So I just think it's really cool that we did that.
Will this person go with the police or fire to help people?
Probably not on call with them. However, she might be called in for something. You know, if it's really important that if they see a need, then they will. Well, they're first rendering the emergency service, but definitely will be an asset to that. Let's see, city council, all of us have different backgrounds. Mine's banking, as you know. I'm probably the only person that gets in that group that gets excited when somebody puts a spreadsheet with numbers. There is a guy who's retired now, was a builder and managed some businesses. There is a botanist, a land surveyor, paralegal, a therapist, and the three of us are retired, 5 have full-time jobs. I work a lot at this, and it's not because it's required. There's certain things that are required. The time isn't necessarily that. I just like it. I have fun at it. So yeah, we get paid. And I said when I came in, my intention was to get my hourly rate as low as possible because that works for me. It's $600 a month in case you're curious. I'll just mention that. So the question about how the city spends its money is one, and the handout that I brought is the newsletter. And inside, right at the staple fold, that you can see this is the popular version that people like to see our numbers. And the pie charts, I think, are the great ones that really kind of show it. Now, we've had some hits, as has everybody during the pandemic. The sales tax is 25%, the gaming tax is 22%. Those used to be each a third of our revenue. And pandemic hit, now not so much. We're doing okay. We did not furlough anybody. We did not change any services, and we cut back on things that maybe were in the works to be happen. Like a few projects that could wait, and then put them off so that we can continue the services. And so that's just information if you're interested, so you can see what that is.
How big, what's the population of Hill Heights roughly?
Around 26,000. Give or take 1,000. I don't know. Yeah.
How's
Then,
that ranking in the size of the county?
oh, I have no idea. That's a good question. I will try to remember to find that out. If you're interested. But, and I'm going to keep talking on doing that so that I can write this
That's
down.
for your own.
I wouldn't expect you to know this, but was there a big variance on the gaming tax because of the pandemic?
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah. It used to be about 33% of our revenue, and you can see that it's going down. Now, it was already decreasing a little. St. Charles, unfortunately, is offering a lot of competition, but that happens, and it's up to the manager there of the casino to manage the business in a way that generates revenue. It, by the way, well, no, wait, I'll come back to that because I'm getting ahead of myself. What I do for residents, that was one that somebody asked, one of my friends. It's important to, I think, to return all calls, texts, emails, whatever comes in within, it's not on a timely basis, and I set 48 hours for people that will do that. Sometimes people call and ask about a street repair, so I call Public Works and see what's going on there, or send them an email. It's really fast sometimes to get an answer. And people complain, you probably do this if you don't live in Maryland Heights. If you're in unincorporated areas, this isn't even relevant, but county manages certain streets, and their budget for streets is always strained. They look for grants to do that. So people say, oh, our streets are in terrible shape, but the streets that are in not such good shape are the one managed by the county, Dorset, McKelvey, and those. So you know that that happens in other cities as well. Our streets managed by Maryland Heights are tip top shape, so that's right. We do have, and you mentioned shoveling, David, I think, yeah, Public Works is great.
They did a great job. They really did.
My challenge is keeping track of my notes when people call in, and then might lose track of them, and so not all of them, but I thought, okay, so that's what I'm working on, is how to keep them regimented so that I can follow through and tell people, you know, if they haven't heard from me, call me back, remind me. That would be a way that they could help me do my job, the answer to that one question. I also learned, when I first came in, I thought I was finding all these facts for projects. The TIF was a big thing, and there were people protesting against the TIF, and I thought, well, if they only knew what I knew, then they would be okay with it. That's not true. I've discovered that people want me to listen to them. They may not change their opinion at all, and they're not asking me to give them the facts. If they do, I'm happy to support, give them the information. But often it's just, boy, I'm really unhappy about this project. There was one on Marine, just east of Driftwood Place, between the Y and Driftwood, that was proposed, and it ended up getting turned down by the way. Everybody on Driftwood was complaining about how bad it was because there were smaller houses and smaller lots. And that became the consensus of planning and zoning. It didn't fit within that neighborhood. I think they were really glad to learn that. People were calling me and say, vote against it. And the thing is, I'm not even in the process at that point. So the staff does a good job of really looking at things and getting that handled. So my point is, I learned to listen, and sometimes I forget, and then I hear the conversation, I think, oh, shut up, Susan, and just listen, or paraphrase what they're saying, give them the sense that they've been heard, and that's important. What I do for the city, is to understand what's going to come before the council for a vote and be absolutely informed on everything. Of course, it's easier for me because I go to all these meetings to get that information. And I love being informed. I'm remembering when I was at National Bank of Detroit, which was my first banking job. I just separated from my husband and I was getting it, I decided to get divorced, but I was just stuck. I was sitting at my desk looking at all the things that were overdue that we needed to do. And I was dead in the water. So finally I worked up the courage to go into the office of my root manager and I told her what was so. It was so great. And he said, well, okay, this one's what you need to do. And there was one, I just had no clue. And I always thought I had to know everything. I don't know if you put that on yourself, but I thought, well, I just couldn't let people know if I didn't know something. And what he said was, okay, go over to Pete. He knows a lot about that. Go sit down at his desk and say, Pete, make me smarter about that. I have used that term ever since, and I was freed up for if I didn't know it, I can go to somebody and make me smarter about this. And I discovered that, yeah, that's actually paying them a compliment. Like if somebody comes to me and asks something, they're sitting and I know it. So that made a huge difference for me. And that I can go to people about something that's going to come up in the council and make me smarter about it. And they do. My vote must always be an informed one. One of the things that was important and still is important is becoming familiar with the Howard Bend Levy District. You've heard of that probably. It comes up all the time. It's about 50% of the the land in, like 6 square feet, whatever. That's 50% of our land. And they remember the ill-fated TIF convention that I mentioned. It was frustrating that that was kind of a political maneuver outside the city when it turned down, but that's just a fact of life that we have to learn to
They
do.
own 50% of that land out there?
No, the 50% of the land of Maryland Heights is located within the Maryland Park Levy District. Does that make sense?
So within the park, the levy.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's all individual owners, not,
Right.
yeah. My research for the TIF meant becoming more familiar with that, and the guy who was president of the levy district at the time said, well, you want to take a tour of the levy? And I said, sure. Well, it may be one of the most exciting and scary things I've ever done. We met, got in this truck, and we started down the levee back of the casino. What starts at that end. And here we are driving along thing that's no wider than this table, probably. Well, it had to be because it was a truck, not wide enough for two cars to pass. And he's showing me the temporary pumps, which is what they've used up until now to get water out of the inside bathtub, if you will, out to the river. And it was about the peak of the flood. So I'm looking at on both sides. What I see is all this water on both sides. So I said, how safe is this levee? How do I know if it's okay? He was telling me about how they check on that and make sure that the levee is in good condition, because I had this fear all of a sudden of the levee breaking, and I'd be gone, and that would have been clear. Well, I did that, and we went the whole distance where toward the south side, it wasn't flooded anymore, down the road, maybe River Valley Drive, and drove out of there. It was fascinating, but I love doing stuff like that. So that's pretty great. I promote Maryland Heights a lot because one of the things I like to talk about is my favorite project, and that's the Sustainability Center. And we have a sheet that has a little bit of information about that. Craycore Mill Road, just west of Pattonville High School, is the location of the Sustainability Center. It's underway. We're putting greenhouses in there. We have a building for offices and meetings, things. The Ameren facility is already up and running. Spire is adding some, where they're going to recapture methane. So the idea is that this whole center will be completely self-sustaining, which I love. And the Pattonville High School students will have access to this. There's a path connecting the two. And they can then put projects together for their own studies and get credit for that, which I just get really excited when I think about that, because it's the first one that anybody's heard of in this area, and maybe nationwide. I'll say maybe because I don't know for sure. It's pretty cool. Let's see, then 17 is a big thing. When that first opened, I was telling people about it all the time. And then, of course, the pandemic struck about 6 months later and everything had to close. So that's an issue. It has 4 sheets of ice, one for the Blues, as you know, one for Lindenwood College for their teams. That does get used for other things as well. Then there's a third one for public skating leagues, things like that. And then there's an outside one in the winter. I think it's really fun to see kids skating around out there. I went out there once and noticed that. In the summer, it's a small amphitheater and has smaller bands than the ones that come to Hollywood amphitheater. Yes, it is. Oh, never mind, you know. I forget what the names are, sorry. Okay. My suggestion is that sometime if you're out in that area, get on 141. You can go south from 570 or north from 364, or even if you're further south than that, just come on up. Take the casino exit. Everybody knows where that is, right? That's what I tell people. If you know that exit, get off there. And as you're driving towards the casino, on the right is Centene, if you've never been there. Get off, drive around to the back where the entrance is, and just park and go inside, look around, look at whatever's happening. If it's winter now, well, probably not ice now, but that it's an interesting facility. I took a friend out there, one of my residents who had never seen it, and she was just wow. She had no idea it looked like that. So experience it. It's fun, and there's lots of good things that go on out there. There's some bennies, by the way, in City Council. I got to tour the place when it was under construction. And after the Blues won the Stanley Cup, it was brought out to Centene in secret, because we want mobs, one morning. And we were invited out there to have a picture taken of the Stanley Cup. So that's pretty cool. Another thing, speaking of bennies, some interesting events when there are things happening that have to do with businesses. The lodging hospitality management, something like that, here in Maryland Heights is the owner of the aquarium. So one night we got to go down for a grand opening. It was just fascinating to see that. I got stuck on the otters. I just thought that was the greatest display. Then we had a ticket to ride the St. Louis wheel. However, by the time I finished with all the eating, I was too tired. So I thought, well, that'll be another day. We'll do that. Okay, I'm going to stop there and see some of your best questions. That's great. If there are any other things you'd like to know that I've said, I just kind of tossed out a lot of words. Yeah.
A big residential building behind, off Dorset, behind the Schnucks Plaza, multi-story. Is that your ward?
No, Dorset is the when you're saying this ward, actually we're in Ward 2. Across the street is Ward 1. Dorset's the dividing line. It's called Dorset Flats. The fellow who's developing it, well, actually pretty well done, is a guy who just was a huge success in developing lofts in downtown St. Louis. I keep intending to stop by and go in and look at the apartments. And I've done that.
That's the population in the city, I would think.
Yeah.
Any idea how many units are in there?
Oh, yes, and it's not in my head at the moment.
Okay.
They're mostly smaller units.
Yeah.
Efficiency, 1 bedrooms, or 1 room and 1 bedroom. There are 3 that are 3 bedrooms for people who might be seniors who live in there. The idea is to appeal to worldwide technology, average young people who are in tech areas here who might even commute by walking or by bicycle. We're hoping that they move here, they like the higher upgrade apartments, and then decide they want to stay here and buy a house. So that's kind of what the strategy is behind that, as well as having a good development. There's some other apartments, Boulder Springs, which is south of Page, which you might not even know is part of Overland Heights, is building another right there, more upgraded apartments. Well, there's a huge demand. Every time apartments are mentioned, some residents say, no, we don't need any more apartments, and yet the demand is there. So that's, we try to have them done in a tasteful way. And, yeah.
You talk about all these great things in Overland Heights, right?
Uh-huh.
During, I guess it was last summer, we had an outage. I live in Creek Court right now. My wife and I decided to spend the night at home.
Uh-huh.
So we went over and had dinner at the Old Town Brewery. And I said, we need to go to Westport. So I opened a store in Westport Plaza in 1974. And we were there for 20 years. And we that evening went over there. It was Westport Plaza was terrible. I walked in first, there was a chair railing in the middle of the stairway that had rusted out. They put it over to the right, let it sit there. The window sills were rotted out.
This was the main building, like where the theater is. And,
I mean, the whole thing, the whole
The plaza itself we're talking about, yeah.
the whole
okay,
inside complex,
okay.
probably only a third of it is occupied.
That's
mean,
where I thought you were
I'm
going
just-
with that. Occupancy is definitely down.
Well, I'm not just talking about occupancy, I mean, even the quality of what's there.
Well, I got it.
I mean,
But
I tell you,
fewer occupancy mean less money, and I'm not giving them an out. I'm just saying that happens
well,
sometimes. It's
I mean,
hard.
there's some things there that you really ought to spend some time. Worldwide built this new building,
Right there.
and you look at that, I mean, I was there when it was really a going Jesse. I mean, we had a store there that was probably in our industry the best in the city. And I was absolutely appalled at what I saw at Westport Plaza.
And I have the card for the manager. Why
Well,
don't
you
I
can walk
pass
through it.
along your feedback?
You ought to walk through it.
Well, I have, but probably not looking, like I was just in one of the office buildings
Well, that's different.
the other day. Yeah, and I'm thinking, but I didn't walk through the rest of it. I generally go there like with a destination and don't look around. So I will do that and then pass along your feedback along with mine to him. And I think that was good. I hate to see that going downhill. Another thing that's happened is we have a lot of business in Westport area. One of the reasons, the key reason that people up there are looking to build in the Maryland Park Lake District is that trucks are longer. So the docks for the truck need a bigger apron, I think it's called, to access that dock to get these longer trucks in. And that,
Well, you can see that when they built out on north of 70. Those buildings are much more.
First City?
First City
yeah,
versus Westport. I mean, you gotta go back to,
Yeah.
you know, when Tom White built that, goes back to probably the 60s, in the 60s, which was a different style. We rented the last building that Tom White built in 1979. And others were there, but yeah, you're right. It's too small for bigger.
well, that's what I've learned, what I've been told. And it's been frustrating that we've lost I think 2 other large companies because they needed that expansion, and the Maryland Park Lake District has been a challenge. There's a fair number of things that come up. The pumping stations are the key, and then people like the tip didn't go, or some challenges like that. So that area hasn't been as readily available as it needs to be. And we've lost some big companies in that hurts. Yeah, there are things that are challenges in the city. I didn't mean to feel whitewashed.
No, but
I'm happy to talk about those.
I would
things.
suggest you walk through Westport Plaza and stuff, and object to that.
I don't know how I'm doing on time. Something tells me I'm way over.
Got about 5 minutes and pretty much everybody's gonna leave. so.
Okay.
I do have a question. Daytime population versus resident population. Do you have any clue how many people come in to Maryland Heights to work?
I know. this isn't directly on point, it means you're going to think of there are a lot of people that come here at night, like Casa Juarez is a huge draw. Our intention is to make it a hospitality, well, we already are a hospitality and entertainment destination, and to be sure that people are coming in at night. Of course, that's been down, so I don't know how to say if it's just a pandemic or people will come back. And I don't know that about the working population. That's an interesting question, and I will ask it. Find out. Thank you.
That'd be good because you can help get other people's money. I know when we have to do fundraisers, we all are very generous with our fundraising, but sometimes we like to go up and get other people's money to help fund our projects. So,
Sure.
you know, no high school. There's probably more restaurants than just this that the residents could support, so the visitors and so forth.
Yeah.
And I want to commend the extension of the trail from the recreational center down, because I use that probably twice a week.
Oh, that's cool.
And I know exactly from the backside of the recplex, I call it the recplex, to the trail is 3 miles. So whenever I ride, I know I've got 6 miles in the bank if I get on there and ride.
Yeah, I haven't been that far on it. I used to be along distance runner, but I haven't seen that far as well. Even walking, I haven't done a lot of it. So I haven't walked that trail. It doesn't connect with Great Court Park yet.
Yes, it does.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Absolutely. 3 miles to, you know, because I'm a dated junkie, so for my cycling, so it's exactly 3.
Well, when you're going past the trail the link trail that we did to one of the subdivisions.
Yeah, that's about a half mile around. Is that-
Yeah, but people love it to live there because then they can come over and.
Yeah.
We can go to the complex.
There you go.
One thing that's not solved yet, but what we want to do is extend the trail under the bridge, so it goes to the people on the east side of 270.
That would be fabulous.
Because it's not connected, you know, the east side and the west side of 270, that's really a split, can be a split in Maryland Heights, and we'd like to have that population on foot, be able to, you know, bikes go through there.
I attend lots of meetings, I cycle all over the country. And St. Louis is known for bike trails, you know, nowhere to know. And
That's
I think just in the
terrible.
last year, I've cycled in, you know, Miami, Chicago, Tucson, Sacramento, California. So I'm out there and I see what's out there. So, but what you've done is really good, but that is key, get under the bridge because
Yeah.
that'll help people connect and
Where would you bring them under the bridge?
Well, the only place that
cover.
seems the easiest right now is by the rail tracks, and I'm not sure that's a good option. That's what we've talked about. There's nothing that's very far along in our conversations about location for that.
There's you've heard of Clayton, Missouri? There's a overgrown culvert underneath, kind of where the Interbelt branches off to go east into Urson, not, what's it, Expressway? Forest Park Expressway. Goes underneath the Interbelt. It's only like this wide.
They've had that for years down on St. Lucie High, and we had a culvert. I mean, they built a tunnel underneath 40 to get the football team from the high school.
This is smaller than that.
Well, and with MoDOT's input, that might be possible.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We truly appreciate you being here and
Really, if
appreciate
you
your
think of
service.
anything else, please call me. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, Jeff, you can, Tom, you can get, he's getting the now. Our partial drawing. Photo op later. Then if you can send it to me, Tom. Yeah.
You're fine. You're fine. Okay, well, I think this is one. I haven't done it in a long time. It's a long time. Let's see. No.
So we have a drawing.
Very nice.
Pete, you want to pull,
Sure.
grab it out of the hat?
Fine.
76076.
That comes alive.
Is this your first opportunity to draw?
Yep, first time to draw.
So your eyes are not very
I've been in
good.
the club for 9 years and I've been able to draw.
My brother was a joker, maybe I could do that.
They're amazing.
Yeah,
I have to check it out. Yes.
No, recycle it.
yes, ma'am.
Appreciate all of you. For your interest, and you just were right with me the whole time. And your questions, that was fun. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you.